Now this episode that follows here is going to show us a lot about Naomi. Because what Naomi is going to do is try to exploit this situation. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, verse 20. Now, these are just words. May he be blessed by Yahweh, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. Naomi also said to her, the man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers. Now, what's happening here is Naomi is going into full-out scheme mode. Naomi is going into, we're going to entrap this man mode. What she's now about to do is she's calculating, and she's thinking, this is a good man. And if we ensnare him, we can force him to do the right thing. So we're going to set a trap for him. We're going to set a trap for him, and we're going to force his hand, and we're going to obligate him to do what he really maybe might not be obligated to do, but we're going to close the jaws around this guy. We're going to catch him. This is the way that Naomi's thinking. So, verse 21, Ruth the Moabite said, he keeps reminding us that she's a Moabite. Besides, he said to me, you shall keep close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest. I think Ruth is just naively, innocently communicating these things. Verse 22, Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it's good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted. So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley wheat harvests, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, my daughter, should I not seek rest for you, and that it may be well with you? Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Now, the threshing floor is typically removed from the rest of the society. The women aren't out at the threshing floor. And there are about to be a lot of points of contact here with the Judah and Tamar narrative from Genesis 38. In that episode, you've got Tamar, who's not of Israel, and you've got Judah, and Judah is going to the threshing floor, and Tamar has dressed herself up as a shrine prostitute and veiled herself. And so to start talking about a woman going to the threshing floor is automatically going to call to mind Genesis 38. And it's automatically going to start suggesting that Ruth put herself in the place of Tamar, and that she tried to trap Boaz the way that Tamar trapped Judah. So this is adult material here. Verse 3, wash therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. This is as bad as it sounds. Clean yourself up, put on your nice clothes, put your perfume on, and then go there and watch. And after he's had a little to drink, and when he goes to lay down in his bed, you go get under the covers, and he's going to tell you what to do. That's as bad as it sounds. Naomi is setting Ruth up to ensnare Boaz in an indiscretion that is going to result in Boaz feeling obligated to taking care of Ruth and Naomi. Naomi is not even recognizing how honorably Boaz has conducted himself. Why isn't Naomi thinking something like this? Boaz has been so kind to us, we can trust his kindness. He'll continue to protect us. That's not what she's thinking. She's thinking, let's get the most out of this situation. Ruth is in a really bad situation because Ruth's only access to this society is Naomi. So Ruth can't out Naomi. If Ruth shames Naomi publicly, or even if Ruth says, Naomi, I'm not doing that, and Naomi turns on her, now Ruth's ostracized from this society where she's found protection. So what's Ruth going to do? She can't just reject Naomi. She can't publicly shame Naomi, and she's hesitant to alienate Naomi by resisting her counsel. But Ruth is Boaz is a gibor chayil, and Ruth is the feminine form of that. She's an eshet chayil. She's a mighty woman of valor. That term that phrase is used to describe Ruth. It's also used to describe the Proverbs 31 woman. So what Ruth is going to do is she is going to do literally everything that Naomi has said to do, but none of what Naomi has suggested, right? Naomi has told her what to do, and there are clear suggestions from Naomi. Ruth is not going to follow through on any of the implications that Naomi has made. So she says in verse 5, all that you say, I will do. And I think there's a little bit of all that you say and nothing more, I will do. So verse 6, she went down to the threshing floor, it's a dangerous place for a single female, and did just as her mother-in-law had commanded her. And when Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was merry, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came softly and uncovered his feet and lay down. Now she does this, apparently, in a way that Boaz doesn't even notice. Right? So she's carrying out the letter of Naomi's instructions, but none of the spirit. The spirit of Naomi's instructions are, you go and you make yourself available to Boaz. She goes, and she does exactly what Naomi said to do, but Boaz isn't even aware that she's there. Look at what it says here. At midnight, verse 8, the man was startled and turned over, and behold, a woman lay at his feet. She didn't even wake him up. He's laying there, he goes to sleep, she does what Naomi says to do, and then he wakes up, and lo and behold, there's this woman there. And he said, who are you? And she answered. Now, Ruth, I think, has thought through this situation. She realizes what Naomi is suggesting, and she realizes what's implied, and she I think Ruth wants to preserve her virtue. And I think that Ruth has come up with the only hope that she has of preserving her virtue in a situation like that. And that hope is Boaz's virtue. And so in her words, she immediately starts appealing to and provoking Boaz's virtue. So look at what she says here in verse 9. When he says, who are you? She answered, I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wing over your servant. Remember what he had said to her back in verse 12 of chapter 2? He had said, a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. And now she's saying, hey Boaz, remember what you said about me seeking refuge under the wings of the Lord? That's going to be applied through your wings. So it's like she's saying, hey Boaz, remember Yahweh. Hey Boaz, remember how helpless I am and vulnerable I am. Hey Boaz, please protect me in this situation. Spread your wing over me, for you are a redeemer. You can marry me, Boaz. It's like she's saying, don't do this the wrong way. Let's do this the right way. And he said, may you be blessed by Yahweh, my daughter. And I can just almost feel the wave of relief that must have washed over Ruth at those words. Because you can't speak those words and then go on into an illicit action that is forbidden by the Torah. Boaz is by those words committing himself to protect and provide and not exploit and use Ruth. Look at what he says. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. This is another indication that Boaz is from an older generation. I think this also shows that in Boaz's kindness to Ruth, he's not calculating. He's not setting this up. He's not going after her. He's just honestly, altruistically, lovingly saying, she's from a younger generation. She's not for me to marry, but I'm going to protect and provide for her. He's not expecting her to come after him. But he doesn't see a no-count, worthless Moabitess who's nothing and empty for Naomi to bring back. He sees a woman of valor. He sees a noble, excellent, God-fearing possible wife that he doesn't see himself as worthy of because she's younger than him. And he sees it as kindness that she would even be open to him, this wealthy landowner in Israel. It's a kindness on Ruth's part that she didn't go after the young men, but she's saying to him, you are a redeemer. And he says in verse 11, and now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask. For all my fellow townsmen know that you are an Ashatile. Everybody knows your reputation, Ruth, and I'm not going to ruin it. Everybody knows your character and your quality, Ruth, and I'm going to protect it. Everybody knows you, Ruth, and everybody respects you. Everybody knows who you are. Don't be afraid. Verse 12, Boaz is also aware of the law. He's aware of his position, and he's aware of the family structure, so he knows what's going on. Verse 12, it is true that I'm a redeemer, yet there is a redeemer nearer than I, and I'm not going to break the law. We are going to do this the right way. Verse 13, remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he's not willing to redeem you, then as Yahweh lives, I will redeem you. Lie down until the morning. Ruth, he's got the first claim, and we're going to give him the first claim. But if he doesn't take it, then I'll redeem you. And what Boaz is saying is, I will engage in the levirate marriage practice where I'll be the kinsman redeemer, and I'll take you to be my wife. So she lay at his feet until the morning, but arose before one could recognize another. And he said, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Now, some people look at this, and rather than see the character of these two people that's on display, what we're seeing from Ruth and Boaz is striking godliness. Some people look at this and they say, oh yeah, and they essentially say that what the narrator says didn't happen because these two people are godly obviously must have happened. And I think this shows us more about the impurity and wickedness of these people. You know, Titus, to the pure, all things are pure. But to the defiled and unclean, nothing is pure. Everything it must be soiled and stained. They're not reading the text. The text is saying that Boaz acted with honor and nobility and purity and virtue. And I think that the reason that before one could recognize another, she gets out of there, and then he says, let it not be known that the woman came to the threshing floor, is because nobody needs to know about this. And we don't need to bring up questions about Ruth's reputation, and so let's just keep the word of this quiet. We don't need to shame Naomi, who suggested this. We don't need to call Ruth's character into question. We don't need to call my character. Nothing has happened that's out of place here. So let's just let that report not go. Let that report go unspoken. Verse 15. He said, "Bring the garment that you're wearing and hold it out." So she held it out, and he measured out 6 measures of barley and put it on her. Then she went into the city, and when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, "How did you fare, my daughter?" And I think Naomi, she's got her ideas about what success is going to look like. Then she told her all that the man had done for her, saying, "These 6 measures of barley he gave to me, for he said, 'You must not go back empty-handed to your mother-in-law.'" She replied, and I think at this point, Naomi has to be shamed. She has to be ashamed of herself. "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." Now Boaz had gone up to the gate and sat down there. And behold, the Redeemer, of whom Boaz had spoken, came by. The narrator of this episode is going to studiously avoid the nearer kinsman's name. So Boaz said, notice he doesn't call his name there in verse 1. Then the Redeemer of whom Boaz had spoken. That's how he's referred to, came by. So Boaz said, "Turn aside, friend." He doesn't call his name. "Sit down here." And he turned aside and sat down. And he, Boaz, took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, "Sit down here." And so they sat down. Then he said to the Redeemer, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. So I thought I would tell you of it and say, buy it in the presence of those sitting here and in the presence of the elders of my people." Now Boaz is a good bargainer here. Boaz is a good negotiator. And Boaz knows what he wants. I think Boaz wants to marry Ruth. And I think Boaz probably knows this man's character, and he probably thinks, that guy doesn't deserve a wife like Ruth. And he probably thinks Ruth would be not treated well by this guy. So he sets up this negotiation so that this guy is going to respond, I think, the way that Boaz expects him to respond and wants him to respond. He says, buy it here in the presence of the elders. He doesn't mention Ruth. If you will redeem it, redeem it. But if you will not, tell me that I may know, for there is no one besides you to redeem it, and I come after you. And he said, I will redeem it. Then Boaz said, so it's like he says, hey, look, here's this pleasant opportunity. The guy says, I'll take it. And then Boaz is like, oh, there's this other part of the deal that comes along with it. He says in verse 5, the day you buy the field from the hand of Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. Now, why would somebody not want a deal like that? Well, somebody would not want a deal like that because let's say this guy's already married his own wife and she hasn't yet had a male heir. When he has his own first son, that first son is going to receive the lion's share of the inheritance to perpetuate the patriarchal system, and then he is going to take care of his father's household and his brothers and sisters and extended family and so forth. If this guy takes Ruth, and Ruth has a firstborn son, well, that firstborn son is not him. It's not his son. It's Machlon or Kilion. I can't remember which one was Ruth's husband. It's that dead guy's firstborn son, which is going to endanger this guy's inheritance by his firstborn son because it's not always clear who gets the lion's share of the property. And that firstborn son that belongs to Machlon or Kilion could take all the property, making it so that his own children suffer. You know, you get into all kinds of family disputes. And so this guy's calculating this, and he doesn't want that problem. So he's thinking about himself, not others. So he responds in verse 6, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it. Because this guy was not concerned about the name of that he was supposed to raise up for his kinsman, his name is not mentioned. And think about what this guy lost. This guy lost the opportunity to be named in the genealogy of the Messiah because he was concerned about himself and his own name and his own descendants. And he forfeited something that was greater than what he ever could have imagined. Verse 7, now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was the manner of attesting in Israel. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, he drew off his sandal. Then Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and all that belonged to Kilion and Machlon. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Machlon, there it is, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance. Boaz, nothing is mentioned about whether Boaz is already married or already has kids. And Boaz is not worried about that. Boaz is worried about other people's name. I'm going to perpetuate the name of the dead. The law commands this levirate situation to take care of those who die in this situation, and I'm going to see to that. And then who gets named in the genealogy? It's not Machlon. Machlon's name is not in the genealogy of Jesus. It's Boaz's name in the genealogy of Jesus. That the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers and from the gate of his native place. You are witnesses this day. Then all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. May the Lord, may Yahweh, make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah. I mean, this is glorious. Who were they? The mothers of the 12 tribes of Israel, who together built up the house of Israel, Jacob. May you act worthily in Ephrathah and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Here it's made explicit. That stuff that in chapter 3 that reminds us of Genesis 38, here it is. And Perez also, and Tamar also are in the genealogy of Jesus because of the seed, the offspring that Yahweh will give you by this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her. And Yahweh gave her conception. 10 years married to Machlon, no children. Yahweh gave her conception. The Bible, I know that there are physical realities at work, but in the Bible, it's Yahweh who opens wombs. She bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be Yahweh, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law, who loves you. I went out full, I came back empty." And these ladies, it's like they're rebuking her. Your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him. You treated her like a whore, and she loves you. And she never spoke ill of you. And she didn't even disobey you when you gave her wicked instructions. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Obed. Obed has the Hebrew consonants of the word servant. So it's almost like this is the servant of Yahweh who's been born. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Aminadab. Aminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. Hallelujah. What a book. What a story. What a God. What providence. And ultimately, in the descendant of David, what a Savior.